We spent countless of hours in meeting rooms just discussing every single aspect.
A big part of the Arts DAO community is the uniqueness of being part of a DAO that now owns a number of blue chip NFTs.
Correct. So we had to go back to the drawing boards and really think about how can we connect and engage with our audience in a better way. And that journey for us was a massive learning experience. And then suddenly you have really interesting conversations and you all feel like a big family and you're having fun and you're talking.
What Web3 kind of does is it converts customers into community members, because your customers who mint your project, they're also investors. I remember them looking at us like, what are you guys doing?
You guys are a bunch of idiots. You know?
This is the Crypto Sheikhs. This is the leading podcast in Dubai and the UAE, where you, regardless of your skill level, will learn everything from cryptocurrencies to blockchain technologies.
Well, it's another episode of the Crypto Sheikhs Podcast. It's great to be back. I know it's been a long time since you've heard from us. I'm your co-host, Anas Bird, and I'm here with my main man, Big D. How's it going?
Everything is good. It's good to be back in the studio. We've been super busy for the last few months. And I think the last podcast episode was about a month ago. Yeah, so really sorry for that, but we promise to be more consistent moving forward. We were just busy with our NFT drop for Arts DAO, which we did successfully, and now we are back in business.
Exactly, and actually that's the topic of discussion for today. We wanted, and we received a lot of feedback from people on our Twitter spaces, and also from people in the audience on the Crypto Sheikhs Podcast, on our Instagram, have sort of asked us about, what does it take to do a successful NFT drop? The NFTs that have come through the past year, some have been successful, some have fallen flat. We've been lucky, and I guess we put in the work as well to kind of come out in doing our drop successfully. And we wanted to use this episode as a way to walk through you guys what it really took, like what we had to do from start to finish in executing the drop for Arts DAO.
Yeah, basically the journey took us to get to where we are, and it's been a fun ride. It's been so many ups and downs, and I never expected an NFT drop to be this challenging. I think none of us really knew what we were getting ourselves into. But it's been one hell of a ride, and happy to share some of those learnings and experiences.
Yeah, I think that's what the goal of this episode is, really to share with you. Yes, we were able to deliver our drop, but that was not without its unbelievable challenges and failures, scams, all kinds of things that we have experienced. To kind of frame the discussion, an NFT drop kind of composes of, in my head, three large elements. You've got the community, which in some way, if you were to think about it from a traditional business perspective, is similar to the marketing and customer kind of part of a business. So and an NFT drop is very similar to a business, running a business in some way. Then you have the NFTs themselves, which are the product, right? And you also have the tech infrastructure part. So we had to 10x our learning across all of these categories. We'd never done any of that before. And I think what we plan to do in this episode is kind of break that down for you guys. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Yeah. So let's start with number one. Let's start with product, maybe, because or do you think we should start with community? I think
what would be good to start with is the reason why we decided to do this NFT drop.
Oh yeah.
So initially we had built out this amazing community in Dubai, and then we were like thinking, okay, how can we take this to the next step? What can we do now in the space that is timely and in line with what we are claiming to be? So you can't just be, you can, but we didn't want to just be an NFT community without actually having execute an NFT project ourselves.
Exactly.
So in order to do that, we had to figure out, okay, well, what's the purpose of this whole NFT collection that we're going to be launching? So maybe, Anas, you can tell the audience a little bit about what was the reason why we did this?
I mean, I think when we and other founders of the Arts DAO team, Raheem and to an extent you could say Zayan and Maria, and the rest of the team, we kind of came together organically. We built the community, right? Initially, it was around the beginning of this podcast. We began bringing people who we had interviewed, like Christelle and Vesa, together in a meetup. And as we had these meetups, the community grew, right, from 10 to sort of where it is right now, a pretty large community. We have 650 members of Arts DAO, but we've grown our Twitter to 11,000, and we have a Discord that's reached 7,000. It's a pretty large community. But I think we were following our curiosity in the space. Mm-hmm. Both of us, I wouldn't classify both of us as active NFT traders. We both. I mean, I've always thought of myself as an investor, of course, in digital assets. Both of us have been deep in the crypto space for a long time, but we began to explore the NFT space as also investors because we wanted to see where that sort of went. But then we were also builders, right? We weren't just satisfied with just trading NFTs or just investing in NFTs long term. We wanted to see whether we could create something. We had seen other drops, and like other NFT drops undertaken by, of course, the most famous one being the Bored Ape Yacht Club. We saw the CloneX launch by Artifact. We saw the Doodles launch, the Cool Cats. And we sort of thought to ourselves, well, what if we did something like that? But we also thought, like, we don't want to just be just like them. We don't want to just be another profile pic project. We sort of wanted something a bit different. And in a way, we had built something kind of different because we had brought together artists, developers, all kinds of different types of people, investors, collectors. And they were a pretty interesting group of people. And we thought, what can we do to learn and aggregate the intelligence of this community into one tokenized group, right? And I think we came across the concept of the DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization. And we thought, look, this is a new thing. Nobody's really done it.
Let's try it.
Let's see if we can launch a DAO. And there were also some other pain points, right? There were the pain points of people looking to collect but didn't know how, didn't have enough capital. Can we pool the interests of all those people, bring them together, and collect cool NFTs, right? I mean, that's how I see the development of our curiosity around it.
Yeah, and we wanted to stay true to the whole concept of, in the NFT space, we say WAGMI, which stands for we're all gonna make it. And this was our way of creating something where we all can make it. So so that was kind of the idea. We wanted to create this drop where everyone gets exposure to our collection of NFTs, and as the value of the NFT grows and the portfolio grows, everyone will be rewarded by that. So that was obviously one part. The other part still for us that's really important is the community building aspects and managing that while we were also doing the drop. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that wasn't always an easy.
That was really hard, right? So to build what I think we did right is we focused first on distribution before product development, right? If you think about this again, like a traditional company, a lot of companies in the past launched products and then thought we build it and they will come. To kind of, in a way, de-risk or hedge our drop, so that we could do this successfully, we built that distribution in a way first, right? We built a bit of an audience for ourselves on Twitter. We built an audience on Instagram, and we built that in real life community. And I think that's the first thing I'd say that helped us.
Yeah, and the difference in that is that you gather people around ideas and discussions and values rather than a certain product. And if you can bring those people together to gather around the same things, the same nucleus, then adding a product on top of that is relatively easy. It's not easy, but it's easier than if you create the product and then try to find the people that are interested in that specific product.
Yeah, 100%. So we were able to talk to our community members, understand their needs, and slowly iterate or ideate the kind of product that we believed would work for them. So how did we kind of do that? Let's also talk about some of the difficulties here, right? So in building an NFT drop, we also were looking at, those, at the time that we were building this, we saw a number of NFT collections launch by, some were scammy, some were just, in the beginning, I remember there were different types of derivative projects. So derivatives are just like a copy of something else. So the Bored Ape Yacht Club, let's say that launched, but people were making like other
Different
types of Bored
apes,
Apes. They were kind of also the crypto punks. We had like the fast food punks, and there were all these weird things that came out, and there was no roadmap for many of them. People were just launching these collections, hoping that they would go up in value. And we saw some of this stuff, but we also saw that many of these projects had built great Twitter followings, and many of them then built Discords to gather the community together. So with the first thing that we decided we had to do was that's an important part of any NFT launch. You have to have a Twitter following, because the Twitter sort of platform is kind of where the crypto NFT universe kind of comes together. And so if you're doing a lot of your community building on other platforms, you can do it, but it's not going to be as easy to convert those people into buyers, into people who mint your project, right? And minting, by the way, is when you actually go in and purchase the NFT, right? It's kind of you're creating the NFT, so to speak, if it's a generative art collection. But so one of the first challenges one of the first things that we did right, I'd say, is that we built a WhatsApp group. And this WhatsApp group has now become like an OG group for all of our top members and collectors who are part of our community. Initially, it was capped at 256, but we've since now been able to increase that because WhatsApp changed its rules. But we did that right. But one of the first challenges we had was how to get an audience on Discord and how to get an audience on Twitter for who we were, right? I have this screenshot of our first Twitter post, or when we just created our Twitter for Arts DAO, and we had 0 followers. And the three of us were the followers, actually, myself, you, and other members of the Arts DAO team. And we've grown that to 11,000, right? But the beginning of that, I'll be honest, we pursued some methods that we thought would be helpful, but turned out to be very bad, right? The first thing we did was we actually spoke to somebody who was a growth marketer who had apparently worked with some leading blockchain companies in growing their Twitter. And we actually dished out quite a bit of money for this. I think it was close to $9,000 for them to help build that initial Twitter following, right? But what happened was they did this giveaway.
They did a lot of giveaways and cheap marketing tactics that attracted a complete wrong audience.
Exactly.
What happened essentially was that we received loads of bots
followers
and kind of followers that are not in our target audience, and recreating that and trying to remove those followers and starting something fresh is difficult.
There was a moment I remember when we thought we should just abandon this Twitter account because it's dead. It's not it's not going to work. But we said no. We let's try and fix it, because we had already built some following on there. I think we reached like 200 followers, and then we did this thing and we grew to like, I don't know, 4,000. And then we realized that there was no engagement happening, and we had to find a way to delete them. So we began aggressively deleting them, right? And then we thought, okay, maybe we should work with a professional team that can deliver that, or has delivered NFT drops in the past, right? So we were grateful, actually. We were able to recover some of the money that we initially paid for that growth marketer. So we weren't exactly scammed there. We got out of that, and we thought, okay, let's, we found this group of people that had done some drops already, and they said that, look, we can grow your Discord, your Twitter, we can do all that for you and help you kind of sell out your collection. And so we I think we paid quite a bit of money for that, but that also turned out to be,
that also failed
massively, right? And the Discord itself again got botted, right? I mean, I'm grateful that what they did show us was how to build a Discord, because we had no experience building a Discord, right? A Discord includes a number of channels. It's got, you've got the product itself, the NFT, you've got the general, you've got the sneak peeks, you've got like all kinds of different channels in a Discord that allow people. We didn't know how to build one. And so, I mean, in that sense, it was great that we got to experience that, and it forced us to also go into other Discords and explore what they looked like.
I think that there's two ways you can make an NFT project successful. One is the typical PFP project where you create loads of hype, you grow your Discord massively with loads of fake followers, and then you try to create this externally, visually type of appearance. But for a project where you need more substance, for a project where your buyers are going to ask you detailed questions, where they're going to actually do a proper due diligence before they invest in your project, and the project that is the price tag is a bit higher, you need to provide quality and value, and you need to show that you have built up your business organically. So we had to go back to the drawing boards and really think about how can we connect and engage with our audience in a better way. And that journey for us was a massive learning experience. So we didn't go, we tried to go through the path that everyone else was going, but we realized that in order to get where we wanted to, we wouldn't be able to do that. We had to set our own mark. We had to learn our own way. And that's what we started to do. So we started to engage with people on AMAs, started to really, engage with people on Discord, started to do the Twitter spaces.
Yeah, so I think that was where we realized the key differentiator. If you remember, Danosch, we did Twitter spaces every day. That was a very challenging thing to do, because the Twitter spaces were organized to meet the US market so that we could have a good audience on. The first Twitter space I did, I remember we had just a few people in there, right? There was 8 people. Bear in mind, not many people were used to attending Twitter spaces. The people who got onto Twitter space, I think, came from Clubhouse, and that was a very sort of US kind of audience initially. Even our own community, which we were building, they weren't necessarily coming to Twitter spaces all the time. But that didn't stop us, right? I remember we had to brainstorm topics to discuss on our Twitter space, and we had to add value so the audience would stick. We had to invite guests who could bring that value, and we had to be consistent, right? We worked we built a sort of team at this point to kind of bridge that. We worked very well actually with the UAE NFT community, in also doing Twitter spaces with them, which was effective. But it took a massive toll on me, because I was doing these Twitter spaces, both of us, at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Sometimes they stretched even to 10 because they were so long. And I remember the stresses sometimes. There were even members of our team who didn't want to do them because they were stressful. You know, you're on stage, you're emceeing an event, so to speak.
It's also you're extending your workday by another 2-3 hours, because we already work pretty long hours, and then another 2-3 hours on top of that. It's not easy.
It's very, very
and
hard.
you do that every day.
Every
and it's easy
single
to face
day.
burnout. Yeah.
Wow.
So that, but the thing is, there is no easy way to do a project successfully. I think that's kind of the conclusion. And one advice I give to people that do the Twitter Spaces is, because many people think that, okay, it's not worth my time if there's not 400 or 500 people in the space. You know, in order to reach that level, you need to grind every day. And even if it's just 5 people in the space, just get everyone to talk, everyone to engage. That way you build a small group that love what they're talking about, love what they're part of, and next day they will show up again, and they might bring another friend, involve that guy as well, and then suddenly you're 20 people, and then suddenly you're 100 people, and then suddenly you have really interesting conversations, and you all feel like a big family, and you're having fun, and you're talking, you know.
This is exactly what happened to us. We went from having 5-10 people in our Twitter space to having at some point 200-300 people. We hosted the likes of Dolce and Gabbana when we did a
that's also when our Discord blew up.
Yeah. We also did a Twitter space with Ryan Carson, who, you know, I think before then was the chief operating officer at Proof and Moonbirds, a big name in the NFT space. Brendan from Premint, so that then really changed things, right? We grew from there. We established a brand on the Twitter Space platform, and people actively looked forward every day to come to our spaces, right? So that's how we then began. You know, why is this important now? If you're building an NFT project, you have to do this because that's how people develop trust in you, right? When they trust you, the founders, then they're willing to part with their money to support an investment in what you're building, right? And so this is why building distribution is key. Another part of this as well, which we also need to talk about, is the collaborations. NFTs, in growing them, you cannot sell out an NFT drop without doing important collaborations with other potentially successful or established NFT communities out there, because that's how you sort of cross-pollinate, right? You give them an opportunity to explore your project, and you give maybe your community an ability to explore their project, and you kind of grow together. And that's what we did sort of with the UAE NFT community, who, you know, who are also part of our Arts DAO community in a big way. We kind of grew together. But then we also did some very important collaborations with, Danosch, you led this. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
I would say Web3 is, it's very true to its name. It's a big web, right? In all of the senses of the word. It's a big web of companies, brands, people that all can get connected together. And I would go as far to say that the success of a project, up to 50%, relies on how well you can collaborate with other people, communities, and brands. And what we did successfully, and I think we only realized this towards the end, that these partnerships and collaborations are hugely important. So you need to build these relationships, build these bridges, and we try to, in the beginning, I think we were really and throughout, we were very selective about who we want to partner with, because at the end of the day, your partners or collaborators will also reflect on you and the quality of your guys and your team and your project. So we're being very selective, but we partner with some very big, cool projects like the Doodles, etc. And through these collaborations or the ETH Lizards, we managed to get communities that were super interested in our project. And started asking us all the right questions and started,
which pushed us to improve as well.
Exactly. And it was almost like, wow, now we have a big company or a city to manage.
Exactly.
And people are coming with all
these questions.
All questions.
It was scary. It was scary at times, because we were like, there were times when I didn't know how to answer their questions.
Man, some of these questions were so smart.
And you know, this is what I say to people who are looking to found NFT projects. You need to be thick-skinned to take in the criticism, right? There were people who came in who also kind of, I wouldn't say FUD, which stands for fear,
Uncertainty, denial.
and denial, or something, doubt. But FUD is a word used in crypto to kind of belittle a project and say that it's a scam or something, right? But there are people who came into our project and just said, this project looks like it's not going to do well. It looks like a rug pull or something that isn't going to go well. And, you know, the default for some founders is maybe to just take that personally. And some of these founders, what they'll probably do is just kick them out of the Discord or block them on Twitter. And what that just does is it backfires, because these guys then go out onto Twitter and Discord and just say, don't trust these guys. I went in there, said some stuff, and they just immediately banned me. No, we didn't do that.
No, we didn't.
We engaged with them. We took what they said at good sort of
face value,
and said, look, you've raised a valid concern. You know, maybe some of the concerns they raised with us was like, you know, how are you legally structuring this as a DAO? How will the DAO operate? How will it buy funds? How will it distribute? You know, these are all important questions that even right now, I will say, we don't have all the answers to, because the space is still not super sophisticated, but we are at least trying to develop answers and figuring it out. That's how you pioneer something.
And I would say to our advantage is that we spend countless of hours in meeting rooms just discussing every single aspect and, you know, every single detail of our drop. And
to great frustration to the team. Our team at many times hated us. So we had hired a team to go on to support us on social media. You know, shout out to Idana for being an amazing social media kind of manager, and all the members of the team, like my brother Nader, you know, Jamilia, who's been organizing all of this together, Maria,
Jayatma,
everybody on the team, Rahim. But I remember them looking at us like, what are you guys doing?
You guys are a bunch of fucking idiots. You know,
What's your French?
you're changing your business model every 10 seconds.
But that's part of what it's like to build a startup. Your product, your strategy needs to respond. And this is why when you build a community first, you have the pain points in front of you and the responses to those issues that allow you to think we need to change. And remember, there were some moments I'd call you and be like, Danosch, this is not working out. We have to change the whole thing. The whole thing has to change. And you'd look at me, and thankfully you were a very flexible person. You were like, you're right. We have to change. Now, on us, let's think about how we communicate this to our team. Because, you know, us doing many changes, it really hurts morale, which it does. And that's one of the other challenges we had to face, right? Consistently raising and maintaining the morale of the team so they don't lose trust in you. Because if they lose trust in you, there's no project.
There's two different types of people, right? There's the people that are very open to change. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's already in your DNA. You change all the time and you try to adapt and iterate. But a lot of people, they like stability. They like that things are predictable. And when things stop being predictable, they lose interest, they lose motivation, and they can easily get burnt out. So, and also many times when you came with, you know, these like 180-degree changes, I was like, hold up, honestly, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe you should hold your horses, sleep for 2 days, you know. And then we decided to not implement some of those changes, but we did do a lot of changes, and luckily the team, they were amenable in the end.
Yeah. So just to summarize this little section here, we talked about community. There's several parts to it. To do a successful NFT drop, it's important to start building the community first. We'll talk about product in a second, but community effectively captures the marketing. It captures the sales in some senses, and it also captures what Web3 kind of does is it converts customers into community members, because your customers who mint your project, they're also investors, right? They buy into your drop, and by buying into your drop, they're also looking to make money, right? Because if they make the right investment, your project goes up in value, they make money and they're happy as a result, right? We've been lucky to have had that. Our floor price, which we minted at 0.49, has actually, we reached, right now it's sitting around 0.6, close to, it's approximately 30% up. But we also reached 1 ETH at one point, and it's since dipped a little bit because of maybe the profit taking and the ETH price action. But we've been grateful to have been able to deliver that.
Not just
history having done this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sustain the price is very hard
It's
in the current
challenging.
in current market environment, and it just goes on to show what an amazing community we've been able to build, that truly believe in the long-term value of what we're trying to achieve and are holding on to the tokens, so that showing their support and truly supporting the direction of where Arts DAO is going.
Yeah. Just to close this off, so what you got to do, you got to focus on building an audience on Twitter, building an audience on Discord. And to do this, you have to do it through collaborations, Twitter Spaces, and other outreach methods or AMAs that allow that community to get to know who you are. All right, now let's talk about the second most important part of doing an NFT drop, which is the product itself. The NFT, right? The non-fungible token itself. This, again, is another whole work stream, which requires you to, again, build a team. You need to have a team that, we've just talked about community. So we had hired a team to help us on the Discord and on the social media, in our case, to some extent the sales, direct sales, and also the collaborations. But there's also the team managing or assisting with the product itself, the product development part, right? For us, we were very lucky to do this drop in collaboration with Christelle Bashara, who she's had a lot of success as a traditional artist here in the Middle East, and also one of the co-founders of our community as we built our community through the initial meetups we had hosted in her studio. But she was the artist for our collection, the Eternal Gates, which grants you access to the Arts DAO community and being part of our DAO. But remember, there was a lot of thinking around this as well. In the very beginning, we were considering doing an avatar project with her, where she was going to use one of the bits of her art, which involves a king, to be sort of the avatar for her NFT drop. But then after some additional discussions, we then moved. She was more interested in doing something a bit different, right? Not an avatar project. And this itself was a challenge for us to kind of conceive, because we were looking at a market fully composed of avatar projects, and we were there saying, well, let's do something different. Let's do these gates, right? These generative art gates that she had designed, and maybe that's something that can add a differentiating factor for us. But that wasn't necessarily easy either, right? Because some of the challenges I think we faced were people not fully understanding the art, some people, unsure as to why we would use that. But we remained focused, because I think there were people in our community who supported it, people in our community who loved it, people who loved the fact that it was a fine art piece, different from your classic profile pics. Now, how do we do this, though? There's a lot of technical aspects to it, right? Because it's not just you can't just, in our collection, we had initially outlined a collection of 2,000. In the end, we kept 550 in the treasury, and we sold out 1,450. But you can't just draw 1,450 pieces, right? Christelle didn't just do that. This was a generative piece that she had created really interestingly, through a number of traits that she had pre-designed using, I think, Photoshop. And other online software, which randomly got generated together in creating the Eternal Gate collection.
And I think one of the challenges there was to, because she had different landscapes, different sceneries, different props, and different gates. How can you combine these? Because all of them, there's so many different possible combinations. How can you combine them in a way so that the actual output of the art matches? So there's no like really weird stuff coming out of each one of them. And that, I think that part took a lot of time for Christelle and a lot of dedication
100%.
to make each one of these different traits kind of work with each other. And then you have to think about the rarities and which traits you want to have and all these things.
That itself was also a challenge, right? How much of the collection is common, uncommon, rare, and super rare?
Yeah.
We didn't think that people would care so much about this, but actually post-drop, people did care. People wanted to own pieces that they liked. The highest selling NFT we've had so far was for one of the rare ones for 3.5 ETH, which that's quite a lot, which I was really quite surprised to see that snipe take place. We've since had a number of 1 ETH, 2 ETH sales as well. Just yesterday I saw a 1 ETH sale. So people are sniping for the pieces that they want. We didn't envision any additional utility for having a rare one, because in a DAO we want to treat people who own kind of these tokens in our DAO to be sort of on an equal sort of basis, right? And each token grants you a same amount of allocation in the DAO portfolio, regardless of what trait or rarity that token has. But which then also leads us to the other part of the product, right? So once you have the art piece, and once you also have designed it, so working with the right artist, obviously there's a compensation aspect of that too. Ensuring that their collection of art works if it's a generative collection, ensuring that the art. So one of the things I think we didn't talk about was, if you don't do that, if you don't check the art, there can be mistakes.
Correct.
Right? We've seen in some other NFT projects, the generative art didn't come together correctly. There were missing pieces. Like I saw in this one collection, like the ear, there was a hat, but the ear was coming out of the hat. That doesn't work. And that actually, people care a lot about this. We saw this. There's also art collections that don't have enough distinction. So with the Mechaverse project, if you recall, there were a lot of people who kind of were saying, look, the distinction between this and that is not too distinct. So we had to double check and ensure each piece had enough distinction that people would feel like this is a unique piece, right? But now, utility. We didn't just want to launch a collection that was just art on its own. We with the community we had built, we thought, well, this has to also go towards what we thought the community wanted, right? What we had initially done was throw events. The community that we had created was created initially by bringing all these people together through nice dinners, events, networking events, also fun stuff like the yacht parties we hosted with the likes of the CloneX community, the Jules community. These were the initial things that created our community. And one of the great challenges that I think we had and the whole team was trying to understand if the community really wanted a DAO that would invest into other NFT projects, or whether this would just be an ownership to some kind of private members club where you throw parties and events every month, right? And that was one of the bigger challenges that we faced, if you remember. I mean, we struggled with this for a while. We were like, okay, we're just going to do events. But then we thought, well, how does the business model work around these events, right? Some of these events are quite costly. We ourselves are not necessarily skilled in throwing events entirely on ourselves. And having events only, does that limit the potential growth of the project? And so how innovative is it really to do something like that? It's probably more innovative to have it as a DAO that invests into other NFT projects, because we also knew that people wanted to make some money.
Yeah.
You know, people don't just want to attend parties. We still throw parties, and we throw some great parties. But a big part of the Arts DAO community is the uniqueness of being part of a DAO that now owns a number of blue chip NFTs.
Correct. And I think one of the unique things about our DAO is our Jedi Council.
Oh yeah.
So we have this unique team of 16 people that have been handpicked from the community. Some of the greatest minds in the world in the NFT space, some top collectors, whales, investors, VCs. These guys collectively, their experience is second to none. And we were fortunate to, first of all, have them all in our community and then be able to actually attract them to be part of this Jedi Council. So the investment decisions that we collectively make is obviously always put forward to the Jedi Council, and they vote on it. And if the vote passes through with a majority, we then decide to deploy capital in that fund. And that's a whole different aspect of it, the capital deployment, which we won't get into today, because it's also very technical, because there's a lot of security aspects to it that we had to plan beforehand with the multi-signature wallet, etc. But the Jedi Council, I would say, is something that is part of our IP.
Yes.
And something that we're very
unique.
Proud of.
I don't think we've seen anything like that. And we designed that basically, again, through iteration, right? We looked at other DAOs. Other DAOs were run by just everybody voting on everything, which was slow. Our view was we want to act fast. A small group of experts who know what they're doing, we have them represent the community. So initially they were appointed, but in 6 months we're going to have elections. So it's a representative democracy within the DAO. So owning our token allows you to vote. And in that sense, we can act fast. And we did, right? We bought a CryptoPunk, we bought a Proof Collective Pass, Admit one, we bought a CloneX very recently when the markets dipped significantly. And we bought them very close, in some senses at the bottom, and our portfolio is now up 14% or so as a result, right? Because we acted fast. I don't think we would have been able to do that if we had the whole DAO voting on every decision we make.
Yeah. For investments, I mean, look at Flamingo DAO. I believe so. They've been around for quite some time, so they have more processes in place. And making informed investment decisions quickly requires that you do a lot of planning. But just because we were just up and running, we needed to act fast.
Yeah.
We needed to be flexible. We needed to be on our toes. And luckily, our structure allowed for that. That doesn't mean that we can't improve the structure. It's something that we're constantly working on. And it's going to be interesting because we just started recently. We're already in profit, basically.
Yeah. But so just to summarize this part, the discussion of the product, if you're building an NFT collection, you have to think deeply about the utility. Now, you can have a utility-free project too, which is just art and just based on hype. That works too. I'm not going to lie. Like there's some projects out there that have just been NFTs, art, like the Goblins, which were a free mint. There were some other projects like that. But if you're seriously considering doing this, right, you're going to have to attract people to buy into your project. You're going to have to think about what it is that you're offering them. Is it a game? Games are actually tough to build. They take years of development, right? We saw with the Cool Cats, they added a game aspect to them. The game has been delayed in its delivery. That's nothing against the Cool Cats, but it's because it's hard to build a game, right? And so just because you say, oh, our NFTs get you access to a game, doesn't mean you will execute the game well, right? And so that's a tough utility to think about. Other utilities might be access to a metaverse, or access to other investment opportunities, or this whitelist, or it's a membership club. There's so many different types of utilities right now. It's very important to spend a good amount of time with your team developing your utility proposition.
And also think about what can you actually deliver on. Because a lot of these projects, they say, okay, well, we're going to develop our own metaverse. But there's about 1,000 other metaverses out there. And at the end of the day, who's going to be spending time in your metaverse, right? So technology, in my opinion, is not fully developed yet for people to actually take time off of the real world and spend it in the metaverse. I believe at some point we will get there, but right now that space is so oversaturated, and there's going to be a few players that eventually going to dominate this space.
Yeah.
And it's a big gamble, it's a big risk, and it's a nice to have, but projects that promises games or metaverses, etc. If you think NFTs are risky, then just take that times 2.
So now we've covered community, we've covered product. Let's cover the last part here, which is technology, the tech stack, the infrastructure. This is a super critical part, which required a lot of us to, again, 10x our learning, because we'd never done. My background as a lawyer and my background in also working in other traditional businesses had never prepared me for what we had to kind of understand on this end. Very much, there's several parts to this, but when you're minting an NFT project, especially one on Ethereum, which is where the majority, I'd say 80% of NFTs are minted right now, you have to have a smart contract. A smart contract is effectively, it's like a legal contract, except it's done by code, allowing two parties to transact over a given asset. In our case, it was the NFT. So we are creating a smart contract where when you send money to us, we give you an NFT, right? Now, this had to be drafted properly. We had to ensure it was audited. We had to ensure that there were security measures put in place. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because you handled that at a great extent.
So I would say the first kind of discussion we had with the developers was, what type of protocol are we going to use, right? So a lot of people at that time, and this was a few months back, which feels like a few years in this space, a lot of people were talking about the new ERC 721A protocol instead of the traditional ERC 721. So these are just two different protocols, which an ERC 721 protocol is basically the Ethereum protocol for creating NFTs. And a protocol is essentially just a set of rules on the blockchain for what that token can do. Now, Azuki, the well-known NFT project, they came up with a more efficient way of coding your smart contract so that it would save massive amounts of gas.
Yeah.
And I remember in the beginning when we suggested this to the developers, we said we want to do the ERC 721A, and they said there's no need for doing that. You can just do this other ERC 721 immutable or something like that kind of protocol, and it does the same. But we were being based on the advice that we had been getting, and this is also a very important point. If you want to do something, this space is so new. It's not enough you just get advice from one source. You need to double, triple, quadruple check every single thing you do.
Yeah.
So this is something we did because for us, being able to offer a smooth and efficient minting process was key.
This is important because this is kind of like the user experience. When you mint the NFT, if it's tough, you're not going to buy. Imagine an e-commerce site. You go, you buy a product, you put it in to go, and there's such a long procedure.
And you click continue, the button doesn't work, whatever.
You're going to walk away.
Yeah.
Right? So it wasn't just the smart contract here that you're talking about. It's also the integration with the UI in our website.
Exactly. So we just iterated that, and I was very persistent on the fact that we should have the ERC 721A. In the end, it turned out that was a very good choice.
Yes. Because
the contract, everyone was like,
they
guys,
loved it.
Wow,
they loved it.
Yeah, your contract is so good, so efficient, so smooth. The whole minting process was so they were like, so well done. And the challenge sometimes also, we had one developer doing our regular website and another one doing the minting and the Web3 integration, and having these two different developers talk to each other in the same language and trying to get one thing done is not always an easy task. And I think us just being very detail oriented made that process and those steps easier than the normal.
What I'll say there that we should also just note is, if you don't do this right, serious problems can ensue.
Yeah, there's the security aspects of it. Where are you hosting your servers? Is it on a decentralized server platform, or is it on a typical like I don't know, AWS server or private hosting? Then you need to think about, okay, well, where am I storing the actual NFTs? Is it on an IPFS server? All these details. I'm not a technical guy, but I had to learn some of these things
a lot.
because the worst thing that can happen is that there is a breach in security on your smart contract or in your website, and people when they're minting or even your project when you're minting, there's been projects where they've like minted millions of dollars and they haven't been able to withdraw those funds.
That was what I was going to say. There was one project because of one miswritten word or I think character in their smart contract. The way it works when you withdraw the funds, so when you mint your NFTs, people are getting the NFTs, and in exchange they're putting money, right, Ethereum, when they're paying for it, into the smart contract. So there's a process there at the very end where you on the this is on Etherscan, you can load up your smart contract and you can withdraw the funds. But what they had done was they had done something where they couldn't withdraw the funds. So imagine you do the NFT drop, you raise potentially millions of dollars, and in the end, when you try to withdraw the funds so you can execute on your roadmap or your plan, you can't do it. That was one of the things I lost a lot of sleep worrying about that.
I remember you were super nervous about the whole smart contracts, and rightfully so, which is also why I think we triple checked the smart contract with like 3 different auditors. Usually people would be happy with the first one, but we had too much to lose, and our reputation was at stake. Yeah, so we didn't want to have any mishaps, which is good. We managed to do it very successfully.
Some of the other things that we also had to work on was collection of wallets. So when you're doing this, every person who is going to mint needs to be on something called a whitelist or an allow list. This is kind of like, imagine you're entering a club and you're on the guest list or you're not. If you're not on the guest list, you can't get into the club. Now, the way the whitelist procedure was created, the reason was so we could avoid a gas war, right? If 100 people are minting a project and there's only a couple NFTs, what happens is the bid price of minting that NFT goes up, the gas prices go up, and you have a gas war. So I experienced this with when I minted the CyberKongs back in the day, where I paid $1,000 in gas fees. You want to avoid that by doing an allow list or a whitelist, so that every person has their wallet address actually imprinted into the smart contract. So when they go in, they are on the guest list to mint. They're not worrying about competing with tons of other random people who are not on the guest list to mint, right? And a big part of the strategy of doing a good drop is to ensure that you have enough whitelist spots so that you sell out. But then there's also a mathematical thinking involved here, because you can get lots of whitelists from the collaborations, the community. So all the stuff that we talked about earlier about the marketing, the Discord, Twitter, the collabs, you can get lots of whitelists, but how many of those whitelists will actually mint? So we had to do some probabilities here, thinking out of, let's say we have a collection of, in our case, 2,000. We assume maybe 40% of the people whitelisted will mint. Some people might not mint because they forget. Some people have lost money and they decide they can't mint anymore. We had this. We had some big ticket people who were keen to mint, who then in the last minute said to us, look, we can't mint. We don't have the money. Don't have the funds. I'm not interested. Blah, 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 blah. Things change in this space so quickly. So we had, I don't know how many countless discussions thinking about whitelist strategy. It was one of the biggest challenges we faced.
Yeah, and I think, adding to that, one thing that we have learned over the course of the last 7 months is the importance of having the right people in the right spot. And hiring in Web3 is not easy. Hiring in Web3 because essentially you're hiring for roles that people sometimes have never done, and you expect them to learn on the job. And if they have experience, they're already so expensive that it's very difficult to get them.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit, Anas, about, what were some of the challenges that we faced when we hired people?
There were people who we hired who claimed to be able to do something, but then didn't deliver. That's something that you get. The problem, it's not necessarily them, but potentially it's they might think that because they have experience in this space from the Web 2 perspective, they're able to deliver in the Web 3 space. Whether that's marketing or whether that's,
I would also go as far to say that even some projects in the NFT space, just because you've been successful with a, let's say, PFP project, doesn't mean you're going to be successul with a DAO. A DAO project is completely different.
Yeah, completely different. We had challenges. We talked about some of the people we hired. Just from a kind of agency perspective, they brought us fake followers, right? Then we had people who we hired, but it was difficult to maybe motivate them to work because, maybe they didn't feel. It was also our fault. We had to change our direction so many times. It's very much about, do you trust these people? Us.
Hiring in a startup is different, right? Because things move fast, nothing is organized. You have to be kind of very self-motivated
and self-leading.
Correct. And many people, especially I would say Gen Z, they have a completely different approach to work. They only want to do things that are fun. They only want to do things that appease them. And finding people that are willing to roll up the sleeves and just run with it is so difficult.
That was hard. But at the same time, I also have to say, it's also our fault for not. It's our fault for not knowing sometimes how to lead. Right? We were new in this space. Yeah. They were counting on us to give them direction, and sometimes we didn't know what direction to give them, and we expected more from them, and maybe they thought, look, these guys, they're not going to end up anywhere. So that's also the challenge. Right? That was also the challenge. But yeah, I think now, just to sort of summarize this section, right? So there's a smart contract, getting a developer to draft this well, having it audited perhaps by multiple people. We were lucky that we had some really great developers who even came in at the very end to save us when we had some serious issues. You will have to think about the minting button, the connection and safety issues between the website and the actual smart contracts, which are two different, right? There's the back end and the front end. You have to then think about as well the whitelist procedure. There were times when we were minting, and there were people who were whitelisted, but then they couldn't mint. So we had to get their wallets again, speak to our developers. Everything was done via my ledger, my hard wallet ledger, because that's how we ensured security. But I had to be ready to get those wallets and kind of put in what's called the Merkle root. I forgot what it was called, but it's effectively imprinting that wallet address into the smart contract. We did that multiple times.
You're updating the database, basically.
4 or 5 times we had to do that to get people to mint, right? Also, the other part, which nobody, maybe some people saw this, but you stayed in my house for almost 2 weeks in doing this drop. This is one of the most unforgettable parts of doing this drop.
Yeah.
This house, this studio, became a battle station where we were in command. We had people come in. Like, my house became like a common room. People would come in, come out.
It was almost like the Second World War when the Brits tried to hack the Nazi codes, and I was sleeping on your living room sofa for I don't know, 10, 14 days straight, and we're just trying to make this, everything happen. And people underestimate the amount of effort that goes into delivering a drop successfully on time.
Yeah.
Which was great. It was a fantastic experience.
What I would say, that experience is amazing because, we had to be on the ball 24 hours, 48 hours, and our project manager, Maria, marshaled us well by saying, okay, you're going to cover these hours, this person's going to cover these hours, this person's going to cover those hours. Because on Discord, people were also coming in. We had to keep the hype going. We had
shifts on when you were allowed to sleep.
Yeah, shifts on when you had allowed to. But this is really one of the most unforgettable experiences. And I think, for those people looking to do an NFT drop, be prepared to really push everything that you've ever kind of imagined.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like your classic job. You're not gonna do something and just sell out a collection just by sitting around.
Yeah.
It is an unbelievable experience. But yeah, I mean, I think that covers. I mean, we covered the so in summary, the NFT drop, right? In doing a successful NFT drop, you need to have community, and there's several parts to it, including social media, product, the NFT itself, with the art, and obviously the infrastructure tech part, which we just discussed, which is the smart contract, the whitelisting procedure, the auditing, the ledger wallets to keep things safe. It was an unbelievable overall learning process.
I would say
and the team to manage all of these things as well. It's an entrepreneurial journey that I've never ever experienced in my life.
It was incredible. One thing that I think we missed talking about, but we can just talk about it very briefly, is you obviously need money, right, to do this. And
Yes.
we raised some capital initially from private investors to be able to do this successfully. And that's obviously an aspect you can't underestimate, that an operation like this costs quite a bit of money.
Well, it also costed our money. Let's not forget, we had our savings invested into this, and to some extent, we were significantly out of pocket at certain points.
Exactly.
Worried about paying salaries. These are things that as a founder, you cannot really read about. You need to experience it. Yeah.
So I would say, just to wrap up, should we do the rapid fire questions?
Yeah. So in our previous podcasts, we don't normally interview our guests and ask them, these questions, but we thought we've never answered these questions ourselves, right? So now that we've done the drop, maybe we can finally chill out a little bit and ask easygoing questions. But so Danosch, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing instead?
I think right now I'm at the stage in my life where, I'm finding spirituality more interesting. And if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, and if I had $1 or $2 million to just kind of invest into something, I would start up a retreat in a nice location. Could be Bali, could be Portugal. Has to be close to waves where you can surf, because I'm a surfing lover. And that retreat would be a very holistic kind of experience where people can come to learn about energy, get treated for different traumas, healing, yoga, meditation.
Wim Hof method as well.
Wim Hof method, ice baths, a whole kind of shebang. I would love to do something like that, yeah.
That's sick. What about, what's a secret skill that you have that nobody knows about?
Okay, I'm going to do the child-friendly one. So, I started with martial arts since the age of 10. It's funny because I started with Kung Fu, and I was doing Kung Fu when I was 10, 11, 12. I even learned meditation at that time, which I had almost forgotten about. But when I started with martial arts, I learned about nunchucks. So nunchucks is the two sticks with a chain in between that Bruce Lee uses. And I used to be a nunchuck instructor as well.
No way.
So I'm actually quite good at it. And I could definitely beat some ass with nunchucks.
Okay, and what's your favorite restaurant in Dubai?
So I obviously love Rohan at the Arts Club, but that's a bit of a fancy restaurant. One go-to place that I really, really like is a place called Mama Free. It's a Southeast Asian place. It's both in Jumeirah and in DIFC, in Gate Avenue. It's a restaurant called Mama Free. They do amazing high quality Southeast. I'm a big lover of Thai food, Indonesian food, and they combine it all.
Nice.
In Japanese. Yeah, it's super nice.
Sick place. All right.
So let me get it back at you. So if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing?
I think I had this similar view of wanting to move to Costa Rica and opening some kind of cafe there, like a coffee shop.
Yeah.
No stress. I don't surf, but I wakeboard. So, doing wakeboarding every day. One thing that we actually share is this whole meditation thing as well. We did a lot of meditation together during the drop. But yeah, if I had some money and could just do something else, I'd become maybe a wakeboarding instructor. and own a cafe in Costa Rica.
Well, maybe you can come to my place in Bali and set up a cafe next door. I'll teach you surfing. All right. So what's your favorite restaurant in Dubai?
I think my favorite restaurant, this is a hard question. There's a lot of good ones. I'm going to say that I have to say probably Sharif down here in downtown Dubai.
The Lebanese one.
Lebanese place. I go there quite a lot because it's close and the food's really good. It's pretty reasonably priced as well. I mean, it's Lebanese food and it's really good.
Nice.
I mean, I really like that place.
So, final one. What's a hidden talent that you have?
I don't know if it's so hidden. I don't know if it's really a talent, but I speak Mandarin.
I mean, oh my God. First time I heard you speak, my jaw dropped. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, so many people maybe don't know this, but I was born in Taiwan. I lived there for 18 years. My family actually still lives there, and I grew up there for a long time, so had to learn Chinese. I learned it not really through school, but like on the streets. I had to kind of pick it up because people in Taiwan, it's not like Hong Kong where you can just speak English everywhere. The cab drivers all speak Mandarin. If you go to like convenience stores, they all speak Mandarin. So you had to kind of aggressively learn to survive.
Sounds like a fighting experience.
Okay, it wasn't really a fighting experience, but yeah, I mean, I'm grateful I had that experience to pick up that language. Although I do need to work on it a lot more out here in Dubai.
Yeah, cool. So just as some final words, I would also like to mention that Arts DAO is now opening up an arm where we do consultancy and Web3 advisory. And so anyone interested in that can shout out to us. And Anas, anything you want to add?
Oh, that's it. I think it was a great discussion. I think hopefully people learned a little bit about what it's like to do an NFT drop. If you're interested in hearing more, reach out to us. It was very much a pleasure. For those of you who are listening, who are also members of Arts DAO, thank you for supporting us and being part of our community. And yeah, looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah, and for those of you who are not part of Arts DAO, you go on OpenSea and you buy the Eternal Gates token.
See you guys.
See you guys. Thank you so much.